YouTube. This week, nothing really major going on in the news that we really need to talk about. This week there will not be a video reaction. There's just too many things that need to go over this week with you. I'm going to try something a little bit different. Instead of doing 3 movie reviews, I'm going to just do 2 from now on. See how well that goes. Anyways, let's get on to our discussion of what we need to talk about this week. First thing I want to talk about is in television, the Trvl Channel is putting out 2 new shows that anyone that's in any of you who are into paranormal or weird and strange mysteries or anything like that, you'll probably like these 2 shows. I know I'm going to give them a chance and check them out. The first one is a new reboot of Ripley's Believe It or Not, which is going to have, the Trvl Channel picked up Bruce Campbell to host the show, so that's kind of cool. I'm a big fan of Bruce Campbell's, especially the whole Evil Dead series. I really like the Evil Dead series, the original Evil Dead series, not the remake. But I'm definitely going to give it a look-see, just because, you know, I used to like Ripley's Believe It or Not. We've even got a building down here near where I live, Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum, which I've been to a few times. Some of the stuff has always intrigued me. So like I said, I definitely will be giving it a look at. The next one is called Shadows of History. I wasn't too sure what this was, so I had to really do some research and find out what it was. Apparently it is a supernatural show or paranormal show, where it stars Robert Englund, the man, the legend, the one who played Freddy Krueger. He's going to be hosting the show on the Trvl Channel. It'll come out later this winter. He is basically going to be discussing, you know, cryptids and ghosts and all that kind of stuff, you know. So it might be interesting. I'm going to check it out, see if it's going to be any good or not. So I just wanted to give you heads up on a couple of those type of shows that are coming out. The next I want to talk about is some video games. The first one, I told you I was playing the Final Fantasy series, and I'll give you an update every time I completed one. The first one I want to discuss is Final Fantasy 8. I just got done with it not too long ago, a few days ago. I'm telling you right now, absolutely the worst game in the franchise, the series, or whatever. Final Fantasy 8 was definitely a double thumbs down. Literally the worst I've ever played. The story was completely boring. It was just, I could not get into the story at all. It was just terrible. The gameplay was even worse. you literally had to go around, instead of having like so much magic to use, and you gain certain magic abilities along the way. On this game, you had to draw the magic out of the monsters as you're fighting them. And it would take forever to draw out this magic, because you'd only draw so many. I think 9 is the max that you can draw out, like 9 fires, you know, blah blah blah. You know, you can only draw out like 9 of them max, depending on how you've configured your character. Because each character had to have what's called these guardians, which are basically summons. The guardians, you have to equip them to a character in order to actually raise your character's stats. What would happen is you would collect magic from the monsters, and then you only allowed to collect 100 of them. Like 100 fires, 100 ice, that kind of thing. And then you would have to put this magic on your stats, like your strength and your HP and all that, in order to boost them up. And it was just ridiculous. Because no matter how much you leveled up, your character is barely going to do any damage or do any type of real physical harm. You have to put these guardians attached to your character, and then put the magic on top of your stats. If your guardian allowed them type of stats. Some of the guardians only gave you like 3 or 4 stats that you could put magic on. Others 2, you know, so it was just ridiculous. It was very time consuming. Same thing with the weapons. You had to have certain materials that you collected from defeating monsters that enabled you or allowed you to upgrade your weapons and to change them into something different or better. I hate those kind of games where you got to collect a whole bunch of crap from different places or monsters or whatever to upgrade weapons. I hate that crap. Anyways, same thing. It was literally the worst of the entire series, and I definitely don't recommend it at all. It was terrible. 2 thumbs down on Final Fantasy VIII. Final Fantasy IX. Now, I've played this game probably about 3 or 4 times. I love Final Fantasy. Thank God the creators, you know, after they saw the horrible game they made with 8, they went back to the fantasy element and made 9. It made it more fantasy. And I love all the characters in the game. Final Fantasy IX was really good. I loved Final Fantasy IX. There were just a couple things I didn't like. The character Garnet, Princess Garnet, and the little girl that's in the game, those 2 characters are really, really similar. They do summons and they do a lot of white magic. I didn't like that. They didn't differentiate them very much, except for the little girl was only allowed to summon certain summons, and Garnet the same way. I didn't care for that all that much. I think they could have done something a little bit different there. The big blue thing that they're calling Quinta or whatever. You know, I hated the fact that you had to go get all the frogs, capture all these stupid little frogs to try to get her. like one of her best blue magics. Half the time her blue magic, trying to get the blue magic, was a pain in the rear. I didn't care for that all that much. The story was great. The characters are great for the most part. The other thing I didn't care for was, in order to use I can't even think the guy's name now. It's going to irritate me. Strahd or whatever his name is. The main knight or whatever. You have to combine him with Vivi in order to get him to use his sword magic, which I thought was kind of cheap. Instead of just allowing him to able to do his sword magic, you have to combine him with Vivi. So you always had to play him with Vivi in order for him to be able to use his sword magic. I didn't care for that too much either. The last thing I didn't care for it too much was, in every Final Fantasy game, you have a character who wields, you know, like a spear or some trident, whatever. Almost every single Final Fantasy game, there's one character that does that, who specializes in the spear or weapons similar. And they always have the jump command. I honestly cannot stand the jump command, so I end up not really using these characters hardly at all because of that. I think the jump command is a dumb command, and I wish they quit putting it on characters and get rid of it. It's literally the worst command of all the commands. But other than that, I love Final Fantasy IX. It's a really good game. The story and all that's really good. So 2 thumbs up on Final Fantasy IX. Definitely give it a chance, because I guarantee you'll like it. I'm not sure if I'll move on to Final Fantasy X or not. Maybe. I'm kind of sticking with a lot of the PS1 games right now and trying to knock a lot of them out of the box. Eventually I'll probably get around to it, just not quite yet. So I moved on to, which you guys may think is funny, but I've never played them, so I figured I'd go ahead and check them out. I went ahead and played Harry Potter 1 and 2 from PS1, you know, Sorcerer's Stone and Chamber of Secrets. I actually liked these games. They were actually alright. They didn't bother me. I mean, you might consider them kiddie games, but they weren't really all that kiddie. I mean, there were certain parts in there that were kind of difficult. I think in the first one, I didn't really find all the wizard cards. I found a few of them, but there were certain areas that you couldn't go back to that I wasn't able to get to the wizard cards. Now, in the first one, well, actually, it happened to both of them, actually. Both Harry Potter 1 and 2, what irritated me the most was you try to play the game and they would force you to go through the story mode. Like, there were times where you couldn't pause and do a bunch of searching before certain events. Like, you'd walk up to someone, it automatically throws you into the story. Instead of just talking to him to start the story, it automatically did it for you. So there was no way of getting around it sometimes. You come near a certain character who's part of to continue the story along, and you were going to be thrusted into the story whether you liked it or not. And you might miss a couple of things when it does that. So it's really annoying. I'd rather, where certain, most games you got to go on a quest or something. You talk to the person, and then you start the quest. It starts the quest that way. But you have you got to use the X button or whatever in order to talk to him. In this, you just walked up near him and automatically it forced you to go through the story mode. And I hated that. And the second one, I was able to collect all the wizard cards. And then there's one area, there's a secret area at the end that you can go up into, and where you battle the wizards or whatever. There's 3 wizards you got to battle to get certain house cards, and then there's an extra area that you can go into, and all it does, if I would have known, I wasn't even worried about it, but I wanted to complete the whole game, so I went in there, and all it is there's a little book on the table that shows you graphic designs. Ooh, I hate games that do that, where they want to show you the graphic designs. And I don't care about graphic designs. Anyways, that was Harry Potter 1, 2. Not bad games. I give them a thumbs up. If you like simple mystery type games, it's definitely where you gotta find stuff as well as do certain tasks. It's not bad, other than forcing you to go through story mode when you come across a character. Okay, movie holics, let's get on to your B-rated movie reviews. This week I went with 2 sci-fi classics. This is Sci-Fi week. We're back to doing sci-fi this week. The first one is called Journey to the Seventh Planet, and it was done in 1962. It starred John Agar and Carl Ottesen. I couldn't find a box office on how well it did or whatever. It did, with these older movies, it's really hard to sometimes find box office numbers. But this movie was basically based, the story goes, you have a group of men who are exploring Uranus. They go to Uranus, and as they get there, before they even land on the planet, there's a subtype of alien species or alien mind on the planet that basically reads their minds, their thoughts or whatever, and it duplicates the area that they're fixing to land on. It duplicates like a patch of home or whatever of Earth in this little area that they're fixing to land. Now, once when it reads their mind, it freezes them. And then it unfreezes them, and they land on the planet, and they're like, "What the hell? It's supposed to be rock of ice all over the planet and no life, but yet here we are. It looks like, a forest. It's breathable atmosphere." And of course they're a little suspicious, they don't get what's going on at first. Until they go outside, which they didn't intend to go outside. The hatch was automatically pulled open by this entity. So they were really freaked out at first, but then they realized they could breathe. There's this field, like a sphere around the ship. So they're able to breathe this atmosphere that this entity has created. Basically, the whole story is that this entity is trying to possess one of the men by breaking down their minds, by giving them everything they desire, or by terrorizing them by conjuring up things they fear from their minds. But the men start catching on what's actually going on. They actually break the outer barrier in these so-called spacesuits. Now, I'm not going to kid you. It's the 1960s. The graphics are really not that great. So the spacesuits look real wonky. But other than that, the story's really good. But anyways, look past some of the graphics, because some of the graphics aren't horrible. They're just, you tell they're it's a 1960s movie. Anyways, they break the barrier. They find this one-eyed brain-looking thing. It's supposed to be the evil entity that's trying to possess one of them, so it can go back to Earth and conquer everybody on Earth, take control through its mind of everybody and rule the planet. Apparently, supposedly, it crash landed on Uranus a long time ago, and it's been waiting for some type of alien or whatever to come visit the planet so it'd take it over. Humans just happened to be the first ones there. Anyways, they go through a series of exchanges of trying to kill the monster. They eventually do it, and they're able to escape the planet, and that's the end of the movie. Story-wise, it was actually really good. I liked the story. They were more concerned back then about the story than they were special effects. Now, I gotta give them credit. They tried to do their best with the special effects. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't really all that great either, as far as special effects. But the story, it was a really good story. I enjoyed the movie. I definitely give it a thumbs up. I was really surprised at how good it was. The next movie we're going to talk about is definitely a sci-fi classic. I've heard of it before. I've never seen it, but I heard of it. It's called Fantastic Voyage, and it was done in 1966. Now, my father had spoken a lot about this movie because he liked it, but I never watched it. I'd seen a movie called Interspace at one point in time that was kind of similar to it, but I've never actually watched this one till now. It starred Stephen Bayard, Raquel Welch, which of course, was the hottie back then in all the movies. And then, of course, Donald Pleasance. You probably know Donald Pleasance from the original Halloween movies. He was the detective in them. Great actor. Now, this movie, the box office says that it collected at least $12 million, and that's not bad for back then, domestically. So it did fairly well. But it is considered a sci-fi cult classic. The movie's about, it was really confusing when I watched the first part of the movie. I didn't understand what was going on at first, except for they were trying to escort some guy, and then the next thing you know, people were trying to kill him or assassinate the guy. for some reason, and they almost did it. He had a brain injury. They brought in a special team, a specialist, a few doctors, and one guy they brought in because they want him to keep an eye on everybody, but mainly one particular guy because they thought this particular doctor or the surgeon or whatever might be actually working for the enemy and trying to kill the guy. So they bring him in to watch him mainly. But he had specific talents with radio and frog suit diving or whatever. He was a frogman. They used to call him frogman back then in the military, if they could dive and stuff during World War II and shit. But anyway, the story mainly revolves around him, and he's assigned to keep an eye on everybody. They also bring in a captain who can control the submarine. And what they do is they take this group of people and they put them in this little sub, and then they claim they've always had this ability to shrink people, and that the enemy also has this ability, but they can only do it for 60 minutes. In other words, they shrink something, and then 60 minutes later it automatically regrows to its normal size. And us and the enemy both have this problem. And this guy that they're fixing to go in and do, he has like a blood clot in his brain, and they're going to go in and they're going to try to remove the blood clot from inside of him. This guy has the only answer to be able to keep the miniaturization permanent. Like it won't, after 60 minutes, they'll stay miniaturized. This guy has the secret formula to that. So they need to save him so they can get the United States or whatever can get a hold of it first before the enemy does. So that's the whole thing. Now they shrink him down, they put him in the guy, and during the whole process there's a bunch of screw ups that happen the entire time they're in the body trying to get to this tumor in the brain. They have to change course through certain arteries and stuff, and go through certain hazards. They've had to get out of the sub a couple of times to fix stuff on the outside of the sub. Eventually they get out of the sub to take care of the blood clot. They find out who the bad guy really is, or the spy is. He dies in the sub, and the only way for them to get out is they have to get out through the eye, because they no longer are in the sub. They're supposed to go back to a point in the body in the sub, and the surgical team is supposed to extract them. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen. They have to go out there, and by this time, when they get out of the sub, they were able to trace the sub because apparently they could shrink down the nuclear reactor and put it in the subs so it'd run on nuclear power, and they could track that nuclear ionization throughout the body. But now they can't, because the sub's gone. It gets eaten up by these what look like jellyfish, kind of. But anyway, they escape through the eye, and the the surgical team has to figure out, you know, they're coming out the eye, you know, there's only one way, you know, blah, blah, blah. That must have been what happened, because they haven't been able to talk to him. So they get him out of the eye. They go back to normal size, and that's literally the end of the movie. They just cut it off right then and there. They don't explain anything afterwards. So, for what it was actually really good. I was surprised. It was a really good movie. The graphics weren't, again, it's 1960s. The graphics weren't like super great. But for what they had to work with, the graphics were actually not that bad for what they had to work with. It was actually pretty good. And of course the acting was really good, you know. They had some really decent actors in it. I definitely give this film 2 thumbs up. If you're a sci-fi fan, you're definitely going to check out this movie. It's really good. Anyways, that's pretty much it for this round, this week. Be sure to check out next week. We'll have some more movies for you. And another video reaction. If you have any suggestions, maybe some movies I might have missed and never seen, some gems out there, please leave a comment suggesting these movies, and I will try to get around to reviewing them as soon as possible. Tell me what you think of this video, and I appreciate you watching. Thanks for watching, and I told you you'd be told the truth, and you've just been told.